What's the worst cheating story you've ever heard? My mom's best friend was diagnosed with stage 4 lung cancer. We moved her, her husband, and her daughter in. My mom then slept with her best friend's husband and got pregnant. They put her in a nursing home so they wouldn't have to deal with the consequences. They also moved her hours away so her daughter, who was 10 at the time, was unable to visit her mom. She died alone because she went to her best friend for help. After her best friend's death, she showed off her brand new car with the life insurance money. She married the husband. At the time, her friend had a 19-year-old daughter who was homeless with a toddler. I felt so sick sitting in that car, listening to her brag about how nice it was and how she finally got the car she deserved. Some people are disgusting. She was cheating on me with her ex for about 6 months before I found out. The way I found out was, she called me crying hysterically, saying she killed him by accidentally running him over. I get all her belongings from the police and find all the evidence of them screwing on her laptop. An argument over me was what caused the running over. Police ruled it accidental, and she brags about it in bars to this day. The way she ran him over was interesting. Purposely at first, but he was still alive under the tire, and she had a sudden change of heart. She jacked the car up using the car jack, but it slipped as she was attempting to pull him out. It was raining. And the car tire then crushed his rib cage and lungs, finishing him off. So, technically, he got ran over twice in the same night. I caught my good friend from Bible study having an affair with my husband. I was clueless and blind to it all. He and I had been in marriage therapy for a couple years, and I thought maybe we'd make it. My friend was supportive and was even praying for us. I began to get suspicious and asked my other close friend about it. She told me to stop asking and that our mutual friend would never do something like that. Suddenly, I found my husband going from pleading and fighting for our marriage to literally pushing me out with his escalated abuse. I filed for divorce and moved out the next day. Since that was done in a hurry, I got court approval to go back to the marital home when he would not be around. I had a restraining order against him. I checked the house phone caller ID to see if I missed any calls that he certainly would never forward to me. Well. I found calls to and from my friend every day, several times a day, starting with the hour after I was gone. So I called her from the marital home phone. She answered all sexy, like Marilyn Monroe calling JFK on his birthday. I immediately hung up. Clearly, my hunch was worth looking into. About 30 minutes later, I saw said friend at the elementary school, where we'd normally wait for our kids together. She asked me if I called her. I said no. She said, "That's weird. Your husband said it wasn't him." I said, "What's weirder is that you assumed it would be him who called you and not automatically think it was me. I mean, I don't have a daily phone conversation habit with my friends' husbands. Why do you?" Her face got bright red, and she started to glisten with sweat on her forehead. She admitted to it. Just then, the bell rang and people spilled into the hallway. I said very loudly so everyone could hear, "You're having an affair with my husband?" All the adults' heads turned. The kids were oblivious. I walked out with my kids and left her embarrassed and totally unable to make up any story that countered the truth. With 15 other moms in the room, it was as good as letting the entire town know in one instant. She would later marry my ex. She would also be abused. She would divorce him after 18 months of marriage. Please like and subscribe for more videos like this. Thank you. My ex-girlfriend was at a bachelorette party at a seedy male strip club. She came home from the party and said, "Well, the wedding is off." She said the bride was getting the usual treatment, sitting in a chair with strippers gyrating around her, whipping dongs around. Then one put whipped cream on his dick and invited her to lick it off, which she did until the stripper shoots his load all over the front of her "I'm the Bride" t-shirt. About this moment, the bride kind of comes to her senses, looks around, and sees her friends pointing their phones at her, recording and taking photos, and she starts freaking out. My girlfriend says she started screaming at everyone and generally having a full rage meltdown, which is apparently tough to take seriously when you're covered in stripper jizz. This tale of modern romance closes very shortly later, with the bride having a call from her fiancé, who has already received photos of his bride-to-be with a dick stuffed in her mouth. I've never told anyone this. I feel so ashamed. My ex-boyfriend and I were at a party and we were planning on sleeping over. The party was wrapping up and these girls were leaving. My boyfriend offered to walk them to the bus stop. He was looking at one of them meaningfully, but I didn't have the confidence to say anything. nor did I know what to say. Now, in my country, this is very normal. Guys would even ride with a girl in a taxi to her house to make sure she got there safely or ride with her on the bus to her stop. Sure, some dudes tried to use that as an opportunity to hook up, but the point is that it was a very normal behavior. So on its own, it isn't a red flag. What was a flaming red flag was when he came back and we got intimate before going to sleep. I went down on him and his dick tasted like pussy. Turns out he had sex with one of them and did not use protection or wash himself before letting me do that. Here's what I'm really ashamed of. I just froze and went onto autopilot. I just kept going. I don't remember if we had sex or not, or if I just finished him off. My immediate response was to pretend nothing had happened and to cover it up like I was the one who had done something wrong. Fuck you, Tom. You disrespectful shit. I used to go to a comic shop and the owner knew all of the gossip in the area. Nice dude, remembers all his regulars and asks about you if he hasn't seen you in a while to check in on people. A lot of people in the area grew up with his shop, so he's got stories. Anyway, he told us about this story from some years back about this one regular. He disappeared for a few months, then came back one day. The shop owner asks him, "Hey man, haven't seen you in a while." The regular was like, "Oh, I've been divorced and had to move." So naturally, the shop owner asks, "Why are you divorcing your wife?" The guy said he caught his wife cheating. He had picked up a second part-time job as a pizza delivery man because he was trying to take his wife on her dream vacation. All of the money he earned from that job was supposed to go into that vacation. He had been working this job for like 6 months. It was a whole secret. She didn't know he was doing that for her. He wanted it to be a surprise. One night, he delivered pizza to a motel. The dude his wife was cheating on him with answered the door, with her right next to him. He apparently didn't even go back to the pizza place. He quit on the spot, went home, packed his shit, and left town. I caught my ex-husband because he was a dumbass. He was out of town on a hunting trip and asked me to check his email for something from his dad, pre-smartphone days. No big deal. We always had an open phones/email policy. I opened his email and didn't find one from his dad, but did see one from his ex titled, "Can't wait for this weekend." That had been sent the day before he left for his hunting trip. I read it and was treated to a lengthy letter describing all the things she couldn't wait to do to him on this hunting trip. Things like doing him in the river, in the woods, in the back of his truck, just like the old days. I took an hour to process what I had read, fed my 2-week-old daughter, and put her down for a nap before calling him. I let him know that he didn't get an email from his dad, but he had gotten one from his buddy. He didn't even bother to deny it, just blamed it on me because I wouldn't have sex with him. Did I mention I had a 13-day-old baby? I ran into my former mother-in-law at a bar with some guy about 10 years after my ex-wife and I separated. We said hi, and she disappeared quickly. 6 months later, she is in the local paper. Apparently, the guy she was with was her paralyzed husband's brother that she was f***ing. She hung herself in jail after being arrested for trying to hire a hitman to kill her husband. I was so relieved to have gotten away from that craziness. I went out with a guy for a year, and it was a horrible relationship. It went from cute clinginess to me not being allowed to hang out with my own friends or family without begging him for permission. He was terminally ill with liver failure. My grandmother who raised me died of the same thing a year prior. Every argument would end with, "This is how you want to spend my last months?" Or, "When I die, you will regret the time we spent fighting," or, "I'm a dying man, and you can't even give me what I want." After a year of this, I found out that he was completely healthy. I locked myself in our room and went through all of his devices after a heads up from his aunt. Every medical document was fake. Turns out, every time he had a doctor's appointment, an MRI scan, or an inpatient overnight stay to run tests, he was actually sleeping with other women. 9 other women, in fact. From what I saw, he had a variety of lies for each of them as well, each tailored to how one of their family members had died or been abused. I sent them all a message, told them about what I'd discovered, and he lost all 10 women in one day. I just got home from deployment and went on an anniversary trip with my now ex-wife to Vegas. We went to a couple Cirque du Soleil shows, played some poker, got a very fancy dinner, the whole spared no expense experience. She was passed out drunk and her phone was blowing up with like 20 messages from an unsaved number, so I looked. There were very romantic and sexual messages with pictures. Apparently she had been texting him the whole night, even while we were at dinner. She told him she wished he was there instead of me. She had been messaging him for months. Well, I dug deeper and started reading other message chains. I found 9 other affairs with both men and women. She was even a third in a throuple and caused the husband and wife to get divorced because she kept breaking the rules and screwing the husband behind the wife's back. I brought my then boyfriend with me to get my STD results because I had symptoms. This was the 2nd or 3rd time I had symptoms after we slept together. Each time he blamed me for it. The doctor who gave me my results was already annoyed by him because she was convinced it was coming from him. After she told me I had something again, he tried to deflect it to me. The doctor then reached over the desk and smacked him with my file a few times and told him to stop lying. I had never seen a doctor do that before. She was instrumental in us breaking up. She didn't let him blame me, and he eventually admitted it was from him. Turns out he was a huge and slept with anyone who was willing. When I was doing clinical shifts in the hospital, a lady got chlamydia from her cheating husband, though she said she hasn't had any vaginal or anal sex recently. We asked if she had penetration at all, and she looked at her stoma, the hole in the stomach where the body waste is removed, and we all gagged. What a kink that is. I worked in a factory. We will call them Ben and Sarah. Ben was the supervisor of maintenance, and Sarah worked setup. Ben's wife was diagnosed with terminal cancer. When this happened, Ben started cheating on his wife with Sarah. He had quite a bit of money and promised Sarah that after his wife passed, they'd move away to a beautiful cabin in the mountains in British Columbia. I caught them boning in the maintenance office one midnight shift. I didn't report it because I was a dumb 21-year-old. Long story short, Ben promised Sarah the world after his wife passed. Welp, his wife ended up beating this terminal diagnosis, and he broke it off with Sarah. This literally drove Sarah insane, and she was forced to check into a mental hospital. I never saw her again after that. This guy I personally knew had a harem of about 5 women, all elderly, all with their own homes, and all are either cheating on their husbands with him or divorced. That's not the worst part, though. He admitted to me that he would purposely seek out lonely old women and get them hooked on meth, like he was. So he'd have these women rely on him for their drugs, and he'd have a bed to fall into and could ask them for money whenever he needed it. He was willfully and knowingly getting these middle to upper class women with no real experience with drugs or the street life, addicted to meth little by little, so he could use them for his personal gain. That was his hustle. That was his job. It's literally what he devoted his life to doing. When he first told me, it blew my mind that I was talking to a bona fide psychopath. I'd like to say that I cut all contact with him after that, but at the time, he was my dealer, so I didn't. The dude would tell me stories of how he had these women wrapped around his finger, how he just got $500 from this one woman because he fed her some story about his rent, and tomorrow he was getting $400 from the next one because he fed her the same story. And the night after that, he had to go sleep with number 3 because her husband wouldn't be there. He juggled them like it was a business because to him it was crazy as hell. Thank you for watching, and please subscribe to my channel for more Reddit stories. See you in the next video.